Welcome into Training Camp Report presented by Advent Health. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith, and today is my favorite day of camp.
Pads go on.
Pads go on. Day one of pads after we've been trying to discern what's happening with a lot of touch football. Now today is the day that I feel like we get a better look, especially at the big men. You know, that it's been all wide receivers and DBs. They get to have their moments. But now today we get to see the big men go at it. We get to really see a little bit more accuracy of what this team looks like and how people look with contact. And I just feel like this is always one of the more exciting days of the year. This is when it feels like football's really back.
Yeah, and also you're not allowed to do one-on-ones until you put the pads on. So we haven't seen any of those wide receiver DB one-on-ones. We're going to get some of those today. I don't believe they're doing DL, OL one-on-ones today, but we'll be getting that soon. So, you know, especially for the big guys, it's a little hard to tell when they're doing a full team drill who's winning sometimes. But when they do those one-on-ones, you can really see which guys have quick feet, which guys have good pass rush moves, et cetera. So I'm looking forward to that.
It's going to be great. And so let's take a look back at yesterday's practice. Some of the things that you feel like stood out to you, some of those takeaways that stood out after that day, that now we had multiple days in a row. They had a day off. This was their first day back after that. What did you see?
Well, one thing that I noticed was that Kayvon Merriweather was back on the field, and that's for the first time this whole year. He didn't practice at all during the offseason with an unspecified injury. I think he may have had some kind of scope. So when we started camp, I was a little surprised that he wasn't put on PUP, but I think that's because they didn't expect him to be out for long. And when you're put on PUP, you're not allowed to do anything. You can't do walkthroughs or anything. So there's an advantage to keeping him off that list if you think he's going to be back soon. And he is back, and he's a guy that's probably going to make the team. He made the team as an undrafted free agent last year. He's kind of a bigger safety. He's known as a hard hitter, so I think they like him quite a bit. He actually started 2 games last year, so it was good to get him back in the mix.
And then I know we've talked a lot about how so far the team has, knock on all the wood, things looked
knock on all the wood.
Very, very healthy. Everybody out here for the most part. Trey Palmer did leave a little bit. So what did we see from that?
Yeah, you always get a little concerned when a guy goes into the training room in the middle of practice, which he did because he had hurt his finger during a special teams period. But they took a look at it, and he just jammed it. He actually came back out and was fine. He even talked to the press in the tent later. He even caught like a long touchdown pass where he got behind the defense and was hit in stride by Baker. So he's fine. That's good news. And, yes, we've been very fortunate so far. You're not going to make it through camp without some guys getting dinged up. But as long as you can keep it to a minimum and hopefully not incur any significant injuries, you'll be happy.
And I know yesterday we were able to have Gerald McCoy on the show, which was great. Always great to see him. And, of course, this is a guy whose opinion you want on the D-line. You want to hear what he thinks about this line. And you know with his media job, he's paying attention. He definitely knows what the Bucs are up to.
Although he's clearly still a homer.
Still very much a homer, and I love that.
Yeah,
I'm all for it. So he talked a little bit about how excited he was to see Kalijah Kancey this year, which I think all of us are, because, man, what a rookie year for him, even after missing a lot of different time with some injuries and stuff. But, you know, I feel like this is a guy that could take even a bigger leap this year. And what are the things that you feel like you're expecting out of him? What is he expecting out of himself this year?
I thought Gerald made a good point. There's a big through line, and, you know, the Buccaneers have been known for defense for a very long time. And, you know, we're going to have a Hall of Fame defender talking with us here in just a minute. But Rondé's looking around like, who's he talking about?
Who's he talking about?
He makes a good point. There's been a through line with this great defense through the years of a really good 3 technique or under tackle, whatever you want to call it, that pass rushing interior guy. Warren Sapp, him, Gerald McCoy, and Dominican Sue. And he says he thinks Kalijah is the next great one, and it's going to happen this year. He thinks he's going to have a big year. And Kalijah is aiming at double-digit sacks, which if you can get double-digit sacks from an interior lineman, I mean, that makes a huge difference to your defense. But it doesn't, as Kalijah was pointing out, it doesn't have to all be just sacks, too. When you pressure the guy, when you get him off his spot, you're changing how that play develops. So, you know, I think he had 4.5 or 4 sacks last year. And, of course, he had the injury early on and didn't feel like he really got going until November. So he probably would have had slightly larger numbers than that. But even if the sack numbers aren't there, as long as he's affecting the quarterback in the backfield. And, you know, and we talk about Vita. Maybe people want to put 4 hands on him, especially if he's kind of back to his peak form this year, and that opens up lanes for other guys. It's kind of the same thing in the other direction. If Kalijah is consistently showing that quick first step and getting in that gap, and guys are having to react to that, that's going to help out Vita.
Yeah, and then also Yaya, and it's like this whole...
Right. It could be really good.
It could be really good. And also, I think Kalijah, what is really exciting to me is that I think they always had high hopes for him in the pass rush game. They were a little unsure of what he was going to look like in the run game. He was a little undersized.
Right.
And coaches seemed to just be thrilled last year with what he was able to contribute in the run game, that he wasn't just this third down guy.
Right, so you don't have to worry about protecting him and only putting him in certain situations.
Yeah, and so I think if he's also thinking he's going to be able to get double-digit sacks, we feel like he's great in the run game. Like, that's just him and Vita together. is a force to be
He
reckoned with
led all
for sure.
rookies with 12 tackles for loss last year.
Yeah, they were killing. Yeah,
says
Yaya
something.
and Kalijah, that was incredible. So Zion McCollum and Jamel Dean, I think this is going to be a fun storyline to watch. Of course, no Carlton Davis this year, and Zion has been a guy where we talked about he ended up being essentially like the starter last year because of how many injuries there were to different guys.
He played more snaps than Jamel or Carlton.
Exactly. And then Jamel, we've gotten to see over the years, and these two guys, I'm excited to see what they look like going into it, knowing these are your outside corners. What are the things that you feel like coaches looking for from them, wanting from them in terms of specifically his defense and the role that they need to play in, whether it's turnovers, whether it's just coverage? What are the expectations for those two?
I hear in the building that Zion's having a very good camp so far, and that's encouraging, but it's also critical. I mean, we need him to be really good for this defense to do what it wants to do, and so it's very encouraging that he's had this good first week. And yes, they both caught the ball yesterday, which was the key. I honestly didn't see Zion's interception. I just saw him returning the ball, but I saw Jamel's, and it was off a deflected pass, and it was kind of looping over his head, and he made a nice jumping catch, caught the ball away from his body with two hands. And it's funny because Jamel's kind of been known for not always catching those balls, and Coach Bowles made a joke after practice that
Coach Bowles made a joke at
the
the expense of one of the players. Never.
That dry sense of humor that he has.
Yes.
He's like, he was going to test Jamel to make sure he wasn't on something because he usually doesn't catch those.
A specific catching performance enhancing drug.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious.
But he did. He caught it, and that's what they've all been harping on all offseason up to now is that they've just got to take advantage of those opportunities to get interceptions.
And we've talked about how today with the pads going on, it's always nice to see a little bit more about the big men and how they're looking. But I know that we've been watching the O-line for many different reasons of seeing, what the rookie Graham Barton looks like, who's going to get that left guard spot. And anytime the O-line has any changes, you always want to know about the chemistry and how long it's going to take for guys to feel like they're really vibing in that way. And as much as there are still maybe going to be some changes up the middle to the left side, we feel pretty confident the Luke Gedeke, Cody Mauk duo over there on the right side, that's going to be staying the way it is, and that they got a lot of playing time together last year and into this year, and it looks like they have really kept that momentum of where they're really starting to build that chemistry you want to see.
Yeah, we've been talking mostly in this camp when we've been talking about the offensive line. We've been talking about the positions that are unsettled. I mean, center's probably settled, but Graham Barton still has to win it. Left guard's obviously unsettled. But we haven't talked a lot about the fact that right guard, right tackle duo was in their first year. I mean, it was literally the first year for Cody Mauk, and it was the first year for Gedeke starting at right tackle. And Cody kind of progressed as the season went along, and Luke really impressed. I think maybe outperformed what some of the expectations were for him at right tackle. And now those two guys feel like on their end, they have a really good chemistry, and most importantly, communication. He says they're talking about it all throughout camp. He's like, we keep ending plays and going, great communication, right? Great communication. So that's critical for those guys, right? And as Luke points out, the offensive line more than any other unit has to work in tandem as a unit, because if one guy messes up, it could just ruin the whole play. So the fact that those two guys are communicating well and they feel really good about playing next to each other is encouraging.
All right, well, we are going to take a quick break, but believe me, you are not going to want to go anywhere because, as Scott alluded to, we've got none other than Hall of Famer Rondé Barber joining us in the next segment. We'll be right back.
You ready to get the show on the road? 2024 NFL Draft is now underway.
Grant, this is Chris, Saiki, hey Jayla, hey Bucky, this is Elijah, Devin. We're about to make you a buck.
Yes, sir. I'm ready. Let's do it. The Buccaneers select Graham Barton, center Duke.
Chris Braswell from Alabama, linebacker.
Chris Braswell with a sack for Alabama.
Heike Smith.
Out of the middle, and it's intercepted.
Jalen McMillan.
Touchdown, Jalen McMillan. Bucky, Alvin, down the sideline. Touchdown.
Elijah Klein, guard, Texas El Paso.
Devin Cole, tight end, Washington.
Welcome back into Training Camp Report presented by Advent Health. I am honored to be standing next to Hall of Famer Rondé Barber. I love getting to say that, and I'm sure you don't get tired of hearing it.
Not quite the honor of getting to stand next to you, Casey.
Oh, why, thank you. I mean, man, how does it feel? We were talking about this just yesterday when I saw you about how you're about to get to go back to Canton now, and as an incumbent that you are not getting elected, you're there. You're one of the old hats. It's like, oh yeah, I'm already in here.
Trust me, I am very much looking forward to going back to Canton without all the hoopla that I had to deal with last year.
Yes.
Not that it was a bad thing.
Yeah.
It
Oh
was
yeah.
actually a really
that
good
was
thing.
some lovely hoopla.
But it was it's a lot.
Yeah.
And this year I get to go back and hang out. My wife's birthday's on Saturday. I can actually celebrate it with her for once without making it about me. So happy birthday early, Claudia.
That's awesome. I love that. And for you, what is it like now coming out to Bucs training camp every year? You do the preseason games to still be a part of this franchise. What are the ways that you watch practice? What are the things that are coming to your mind, both reminiscing for you and then also looking at it from an analyst point of view?
I still feel like I work here. My key card still works. I walk in the building, everybody knows my name. Obviously, I'm here a lot during the season. But yeah, staying connected to it, doing these type of things, doing Bucs preseason has really allowed me to stay connected with not only the front office guys who I've become really good friends with, but some of the players and the reverence that they have for me and that I have for them, is watching them play. It's actually been a pretty cool transition for me, but it's been 13 years now.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I've been retired a long time.
A long time
now. I just saw Levante in the training room on my way out here. It's the only guy I played with that's still out here. So
that's great. Hey, at least you still got one, because then it's like, hey, it hasn't been that long. There's still someone on the team here, right? Thank goodness for him.
He can vouch for me to all these young guys.
I like that. And so, speaking of him, let's talk a little bit about him and some of these vets on the defense, and then paired with some of the new guys. When you look at a guy like Levante, the longevity, you're someone who knows a thing or two about what Levante has done, and I'm sure have a unique respect for it.
Sure.
And what he means to this defense at this point, and to be able to do it at the level he's done it for so long.
Well, I think it's important for every good defense to have a player like this, a guy that's been around, that understands not only what's going on in the building for the young guys, but how to play the game. I remember being young and having no idea who I would be leaning on when I was a rookie or even a second-year player in the league. But thankfully, I had like an Anthony Parker here. I had a John Lynch in my defensive room that I could ask those questions to, and that's certainly what Levante is, for his unit. And to be playing at the level that he's playing at still makes it even better, right? He's a lead by example guy. I know he's found his voice in the 12 years since I retired as captain here, but he's a guy that you're getting consistency out of, and that's pretty awesome at 33 years old, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me the things that you're looking forward to watching, particularly in these preseason games, where I know a big part of y'all's broadcast is who's going to make the team, who's going to get these starting roles. What are those storylines that you're going to be excited to watch this year?
Right now you look at, what positions are up for grabs, and those are always the ones you start with. Left guard for one. I think wide receiver 3 through 5 are probably ones that Chris Myers and I will be focusing on that side of the ball. But who's going to be your starting nickelback? If there's one concern for me on this team, it is linebacker, other than Levante and Yaya, who's a second year. I mean, there's some uncertainty there. KJ Britt going in as a full-time starter. Is Joe Tryon going to turn into the player we expect him to? Is Chris Braswell ready to be, a starting outside linebacker and create some pressure, areas that, this team kind of struggled with last year? That'll be my focus. And I know these first days of padded practices will help, determine that.
And seeing as you're very familiar with, this nickelback role, what are the things that you're going to be looking at, and knowing what you know about Todd Bowles, what are the things that will win someone that job, whether it's Izzy and whether it's Tyke Smith, some of these other options? What is it going to be that says this is the guy and why?
Yeah, so it's interesting you say that, because the way that Todd Bowles plays his nickel is not necessarily the way that I played nickel when I was here. I mean, most of his nickels have been safety-like bodies. Christian Izzy last year, I mean, he's technically a free safety. Obviously, he played inside as a nickel, but you're being asked to do a lot, right? You're being asked to blitz, you're being asked to cover, but most importantly, in Todd Bowles' defense, you got to be able to tackle. I mean, that's why 2 years ago he wanted to make Antoine Winfield his primary nickels, because he knew what he was going to get in terms of run support and ability to be physical in the traffic. He's got to find that out of Tyke Smith if he is that guy. And I think if he's able to show that, I think he might be the guy. He's got the mindset to play in there. People have raved about his study habits, and I think he's a little bit more athletic than Christian Izzy was last year. So that'll be a battle. And obviously the year experience will help Christian, but I'm looking forward to seeing them play this thing out.
And then finally, looking at knowing these are not starting battles up for grabs. It seems like you got your starting safeties, and then it seems like it's going to be Zion and Jamel on the outside. Looking at those 4 core DB guys you got back there, tell me what you feel like that's going to look like this season.
Well, it's nice to have the best defensive back in football on your football team.
It's handy.
Yeah, it's handy. Antoine Winfield is special. I mean, I'm doing a film session on him today, an off-season film session on him, and it's impossible to find plays that I haven't already used in film session, because the guy is just, every week you could just talk about him. But before Antoine was here, Jordan Whitehead was my favorite player on this football team. I hated to see him go to the Jets, and I am equally as excited to have him back here. So I think, if you're looking at our core guys, those two safeties, I think are going to be probably a great duo. Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum, look, they have big expectations. They don't look like corners when I was playing, right? They're both 6'2" and up and 4'3" guys. Like, that's not the makeup of the corners that I was used to playing with. But these guys are both extremely talented. I think Zion's turned a corner. He's in year 3, and this is the year where you figure it out or you don't. And it seems like he has figured it out in this offseason. But if you're asking me, my expectations for them are take the ball away. It's got to start there. I mean, we don't generate enough interceptions on this team, and it's something that those two guys are going to be expected to do a lot of this year if they're going to be as successful as they think they can be. But look at these guys. They're two beautiful-looking athletes,
Look
man.
at that. Long, lean, rangy.
They better be able to play at the line of scrimmage, which Todd Bowles is paramount. But I do think their ability to generate some takeaways will be paramount to this defense success this year.
Awesome. Well, Rondé, thank you as always for joining us. It is a pleasure, and we are just so excited to continue to get to introduce you as Hall of Famer.
Thank you.
So well deserved. Have fun in Canton.
Thank you, Casey.
All right, we'll be back in 1 minute with one more segment.
This is the closest thing to a state finals feeling you can have in a regular season game.
Quickly, Scott, quick like a bunny.
Welcome back into Training Camp Report presented by Advent Health. We are joined again by senior writer and editor Scott Smith. You've had to follow
It's not really fair.
a lot of people here. You've had to follow Rondé, you had to follow Gerald, you had to follow Dexter.
Well, technically, he followed me, too, though.
That's true, and I know they were shaking in their boots, But, man, such great stuff from Rondé, as always. Love getting to hear from him.
I was
He's
walking
the best.
up, and I said, how do you do? And I was like, that was a dumb
Yeah,
question.
dumb question. Like, he's pretty incredible at all of this. All right, so final segment for us, again, as we started doing yesterday and we're going to continue to do, we are going to break down each position group. We did a little bit earlier last week about the idea of just starting jobs up for grabs. Now we're going through each position group and talking about who all we think not only will start, but make the team and what that's going to look like. So let's break down the safeties position because,
Who we're
again,
looking at right now.
we are looking at this group and I mean, look, again, we know who the starters are.
Right.
That is not up for grabs. But after that, I think it's going to be interesting to see. And again, as we've talked about also with the changes in the special teams units, are you keeping more linebackers or DBs, and what is that going to look like? So after Antoine and Jordan, what sort of stands out to you here, and how many do you think the team might keep?
Well, let's talk about all of them so we can show the list. There's 7 safeties on the roster right now. I'd be surprised if you kept more than 5 because if you keep 6, you're probably only keeping 4 corners, which I would not suspect to happen. Now, part of this, though, is that a bunch of these guys are kind of position non-specific.
Yeah, some hybrids.
Christian Izzian and Tyke Smith are both competing for the nickel job, as a matter of fact. So we call them safeties. If they're not playing in the slot, then they are going to play safety rather than somebody like Zion. If he was playing in the slot, he's going to play corner. We should at least mention Antoine. He was an first-team All-Pro last year, a combination of stats I'm not going to rattle off again because I've done it a million times, but that nobody's done since they started compiling them all in '99, and he's now the highest-paid defensive back in the league. So I think we're pretty set there. And then getting Jordan back, we loved him when he was here originally, but his 2 years with the Jets really helped his career because he got to play more of a full safety role, not just an in-the-box guy being in center field sometimes, and excelled at it.
Yeah, it seems like he said he feels better about his coverage abilities
as
now.
well he should.
Yeah.
I think he got a chance to show it.
Yeah.
I think he'd kind of been pigeonholed a little bit as a hard-hitting in-the-box guy, which he was. I mean,
he's great at that. There's a reason that we knew him for that.
I always think about the NFC Championship game in Green Bay when he made the big hit on Aaron Jones, caused a fumble, led to a touchdown right after the first half. So he's definitely still got that in his game, but he's more well-rounded now, which allows you to really kind of disguise a little bit more what you're doing. But then after that, obviously Christian Izian came in as an undrafted rookie last year and won the nickel job, which they specifically signed him and went after him after the draft because they thought he had a shot at that, and then he came in and proved it in training camp and won that job, held it the whole year. So obviously he's probably a prime candidate to do that again. But they're going to take a look at Tyke Smith, the third-round pick from Georgia, who has been described as kind of the lifeblood of that great Georgia defense, and it really made a lot of plays. He's another guy that they're cross-training at nickel, free, and strong safety.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's interesting too because I think he played at West Virginia first and then transferred to Georgia
because he wanted to play against the top competition.
Yeah, and each place he held, like I think the first place they called it like the star and then the spear, the different roles he played, and that they were very much the idea of you're going to do a lot of the things that we need you to be, kind of a linebacker, kind of a safety, kind of this, which really lends itself to me thinking that feels like he's got the exact kind of experience they would want for this nickel
for
role.
the nickel, because you really want that guy to be good in run support, and you'd like to be able to blitz him.
Yeah,
so
that's going to be interesting.
And
also, I wanted to shout out the story about Jordan and Antoine, which I loved. That yesterday we have a new person coming into work here that's the player relations person for community, where it's their job to kind of help the guys do the work in the community. And I was introducing him around to some of them. He met Jordan, and Jordan was like, "Oh man, I'm going to be doing so much in the community this year." He goes, "Me and Antoine, we're competing for that Walter Payton Man of the Year award."
Wow.
That I loved that idea. They are competing with each other for, and I'm like, what a great group of starting safeties here, that they're not only competitive on the field, but they're like, no, I'm going to be the better person. I'm going to be the better person.
That's good news for the community.
So I thought that was pretty great. All right, that is going to do it for us here on Training Camp Report presented by Advent Health. We will be back with more for you tomorrow. It is actually an evening practice, so it'll be a little bit later and in the indoor. Who doesn't love that? So we will talk to you then, and we will continue to break down all these different position groups and have the storylines for practice.